Welcome back. It's still the Gavel. Now, you may be wondering what lawmakers in the Senate have been up to. Well, they were also busy. The federal lawmakers received the executive secretary of the Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative over non-remittances to the Federation account.
Discussions aimed at ensuring transparency and accountability in the nation's extractive industry are not yet over, as the issue formed the thrust of discourse at most fora. The latest of such discussions was the debate on the floor of the Senate few weeks after it summoned the Executive Secretary of NEITI to explain why the nation lost $5.9 billion in the extractive industries. The new head of NEITI briefs members of the upper legislative chamber of happenings in the sector.
Out of the $5.9 billion that we lost, $4.7 billion was lost to theft and vandalism. 20 billion naira was lost because NNPC did not observe the 90-day credit grace. And when you look at the time value of money, and if you calculate it at 12% interest, the country lost 20 billion naira because of that. When we look at the unremitted, $1.7 billion is still being owed to the Federation for 8 OMLs from the Shell JV. I will come back to that. Also, $1.29 billion from the NLNG dividends. I will also come back to that. And 351 billion naira from unpaid domestic crude debt. 3.98 billion naira from subsidy over recovery from 2012, and 2.17 billion from cash call refunds. So those are the money that we have established that should have been paid to the Federation, and they were not paid to the Federation.
To stem the tide of what has been the order of the day in the sector, he gave recommendations on what should be done.
Corruption is likely to occur where there's monopoly and there's discretion and there's lack of accountability. So we think in trying to solve a major problem of our society today, we need to go about it in a very systematic and strategic way, and to identify areas where people have monopoly power and introduce competition, identify where people have latitude for discretion and see how we can limit the discretion, and also wherever there's no accountability, we need to introduce accountability measures of accountability.
The matter enjoyed the contributions of many of the legislators.
We should follow this thoroughly to make sure that the unaccounted amount, huge unaccounted amount of money is recovered. Because if you say loss, it means you acted, and as a result of your action, you either profit or you lose.
Most of these so-called corruption fights that we are talking about today, we are talking about 300 million naira, 100 million in local government. We are chasing politicians up and down. And yet, the only agency or agencies that give lifeline to the economy of the country remain the bulk NNPC with its associates, NAPIMS and all that, and the MPDC. And then we are talking about billions of dollars that did not come to Federation account.
Even if we must have an ad hoc committee to look at this report, it should be headed by public accounts. Because like the issue of LNG, for example, Mr. President, the NEITI report says so far LNG dividends amounting to about 13 billion have not been remitted to Federation accounts. But as at 2015, which means that their report is as at 2013. By the time they come to 2014 and 2015, most of the issues raised must have been resolved. So in my opinion, Mr. President, I think we should take this very seriously and ensure that whatever gets measured gets done.
After 2.5 hours of debate on the matter, the Senate President announced the resolution of the Senate.
In going forward, based on the fact that the issues that we've talked about cuts across a lot of the different standing committees and involve the enormity involved, I think general opinion is that we will set up an ad hoc committee with the responsibility of addressing this, with the terms reference to re-examine the financial processes and the fiscal audit report of the NEITI, the financial loss and leakages to government and all its ramifications, the remedial measures and sanctions where necessary.
The committee has 4 weeks to submit its report.
Now, after the devastation witnessed in the northeastern part of Nigeria following the activities of the Boko Haram sect, government saw the need for the establishment of the Northeast Development Commission. But when the matter was discussed in the Senate, the senators were divided. Next is that report, followed by the session marking the Day of the African Child.
It's the situation of the Northeast that led to the initiation of a bill for the establishment of a Northeast Development Commission. The move is seen by many as one that will address the rebuilding of the region. At the Senate proceedings, the Committee on Special Duties presented its report for the establishment of the Northeast Development Commission.
In our view, the objective of the bill is to establish a Northeast Development Commission to be charged with the responsibility of receiving and managing funds from the Federation account or other donor agencies for purposes of the settlement, rehabilitation of displaced persons and the reconstruction of the Northeast Zone.
Most of the senators speak in support of the commission but raised questions on its funding and location.
Strictly, Mr. President, very strictly, it appears there's nothing like funding as far as this bill is concerned.
Some of the lawmakers suggested where the commission should be located.
Since there is lack of confidence for people to try now to go to the epic center to live, we have to resort to living at other places that is more secured, that is more harmonious, that has certain conditions like Bauchi. Bauchi should be made the headquarters.
My argument here is that we are establishing a commission. This commission is not a military commission. It's not a military commission. It doesn't need any presence of the military. Gombe is the center of the Northeast.
After deliberations, the Senate President announced the constitution of a committee to look into the funding and location of the commission.
Because the matter is a national matter, maybe what we should try and do is just take one senator from each of the 6 geopolitical zones to look at this issue of funding and site, and then come back with an attempt on those. If we agree, we'll put a six-member committee, including the 2 co-chairmen, of course, they will be present, that is Poka and Inyako, and then take 4 from the other political zones.
The committee is expected to come up with recommendations to the Senate in the next 2 weeks.
It's 40 years since hundreds of black school children in Soweto were killed following their protest against poor education and the demand to be taught in their own language. And since then, June 16 has been set aside to commemorate the rights of the African child in the continent. In Nigeria, federal lawmakers in the upper legislative house marked the day during plenary.
And protecting all children's rights.
Senator Biodun Olujimi from Ekiti State calls on the government to redouble its efforts to ensure that Nigerian children get access to quality education and their rights protected.
30 million of the world's 57 million children who are out of school are in sub-Saharan Africa, and 10 million of these 30 million are in Nigeria, the highest in Africa.
Her position is supported by her colleagues, who say the issues raised need urgent action, considering the plight of children in the country, especially those in the Northeast.
Those things that are happening in our society today, the Boko Haram, the kidnapping, the Avengers, if you look at the background of those that are involved, those are children of the less fortunate.
After the debate, the Senate President reads the resolutions of the lawmakers.
We urge the federal government not to relent in their effort to key into the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, that provide a framework for government programs to key into globally agreed development outcomes. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3 urge the federal and state governments to ensure the implementation of the UBE Act and the domestication and implementation of the Child Rights Act in states that are yet to do so. Those in favor of prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
While members of the Senate may have stated their position on what needs to be done by the federal and state governments, child rights activists believe that protecting the rights of Nigerian children is the duty of all, irrespective of class or status.